Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to welcome you all to this important Trade for Peace session on investing in sustainability, private sector, and trade reform for sustainable peace in Libya. Today, we gather to explore the powerful role that trade can play in fostering peace, stability, and prosperity in Libya. In an increasingly interconnected world, the flow of goods, services, and ideas can transcend borders and bridge divides, creating opportunities for cooperation, understanding, and mutual benefit. We are here not only to discuss the mechanisms of trade, but to recognize its potential as a tool for peace building. Trade can be a catalyst for diplomacy, creating economic ties that reduce tensions, promote mutual respect, and encourage sustainable development. As we engage in thoughtful discussions today, let us keep in mind the shared vision of a peaceful, prosperous world where trade is not just a means of economic exchange, but also a means for fostering unity, cooperation, and lasting peace. I look forward to the exchange of ideas and insights from our distinguished panelists, and I look forward to receiving actionable recommendations and solutions that will emerge from the breakout groups of this session. I'm confident that our collective efforts will help pave the way toward a more peaceful and prosperous future in Libya. With this, I will start our session. We will have our first speaker with the opening remarks, Her Excellency Ambassador Dr. Lamia Fathi Abu Sidra, Permanent Representative of the State of Libya to the United Nations Office at Geneva and other international organizations in Switzerland. And then we will start our panel discussion. We will have four speakers, Mr. Serge Strobans, Director of Europe and MENA Region, Institute for Economics and Peace, and Mr. Frederick, he's online with us, Tofel, Lead Coordinator in the Transition States Coordination Office, African Development Bank, Mr. Haytham Misbah, Rajab, Assistant Executive Director for Digital Commerce Affairs, Libya TradeNet. And finally, Dr. Abdullah Hamid, President, Libya Peace Institute. For this, I will give the floor to our first speaker, Dr. Lamia. Please, Ambassador.
Thank you very much, Helda. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today. I would like to begin by expressing my sincere thanks to the World Trade Organization for organizing this important forum on the relation between trade and peace. I also express my gratitude to the Accession Department and the Trade for Peace team for organizing this important session on the role of private sector in trade sector and the relation with sustainable peace in Libya. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, the relation between economic and politics has always been a close relationship, documented in the international relation literature, always emphasizes the interconnection between the two. Much of this literature express the relation after World War II, highlights that economic cooperation among countries leads to a stronger political ties, the forming of economic blocs that, of course, prevents the return to war. And also, in our case in Libya, the idea of trade and the relation with peace can be extended to a post-conflict situation. The private sector plays a crucial role in providing employment opportunities and improving the economic condition of the population. Trade is one of the key drivers of development. The development is an essential ingredient for peace building, of course, along with human rights and security. There are many important steps for peace building that ensures sustainability. This includes providing employment opportunities for armed groups, most of whom are young people. One of the key strategies of peace building is demobilization of fighters, disarmament, and reintegration. This goal requires providing them with decent work, which is necessary that the full cooperation between public and private sector. In this regards, the Libyan Company for Managing Public-Private Partnership Projects was established to implement the Libyan government strategy aimed at encouraging and enhancing the partnership of the private sector in development of infrastructure and public services. This involves a cooperation relations between one or more government entities and one or more private sector partner, promoting partnership and innovation, of course, helping the state accelerate the development process and other government goals. Also, the National Program for Small and Medium Enterprises is also one of the institutions affiliated with the Ministry of Local Government, which concentrates with providing the appropriate environment for launching and sustaining small and medium enterprises by spreading culture of leadership and innovative, attracting people with innovation ideas and helping them transform their ideas into successful projects through the program technical arms represented by business centers and incubators spread throughout the countries, with the aim of contributing to achieving spatial development, diversifying the sources of national economy, and also creating new jobs opportunity for young people. We also have the Ministry of Economy and Trade in Libya that organized a program to enhance partnership capabilities in development and implementing partnership projects between the public and private sectors. These programs seek to target unemployed youth and former fighters and involve them into the labor market. These programs have also involved cooperation with various international partners and donors to strengthen the role of public sectors cooperation and target especially the youth and women. Specialized courses for women empowerment, youth entrepreneurship development programs are regularly designed to support the private sector role in the economy development process. These initiatives are carried out in cooperation regularly with the United Nations Development Program and also various development agencies. For the cooperation with the United Nations Development Program, the cooperation with the Ministry of Local Government recently held a program to discuss the challenges and opportunity related to developing the private sector in Libya. This program is part of a broader initiative aimed at focusing aimed at fostering fostering and encouraging exchanging knowledge, sharing best global practices. I also would like to point out the discussion aligned with discussions aligned with the Libya 2040 vision. This vision is focused on the economic diversification and the growth of private sector. The vision of 2040 peace building strategy emphasizes the importance of key sectors such as agriculture, finance, tourism, free economic zones, cross-sector, cross-border trade also, and the development of small and medium enterprises. These sectors are seen as crucial for driving sustainable growth, fostering sustainability, and creating new opportunities for economic development in Libya. I would also like to point out the Ministry of Economy and Trade of Libya, in cooperation with a number of international partners, has developed a comprehensive national strategy for free zones and transit trade. This strategy is designed to support and enhance the Libyan economy by attracting both foreign and local investments. Since Libya applied for membership in the World Trade Organization since 2004, it has undertaken numerous logistical reforms. These reforms have provided significant opportunities for the private sector to enter areas that were previously exclusive to the states. Many laws have been enhanced to encourage investors, and specialized bodies such as the Investment and Privatization Promotion Authority was established to attract foreign investment. These reforms and national strategy align with the goal of economic diversification, improving the competitiveness of businesses and businesses environment, and enhancing foreign investment. Transforming Libya into a diversified economy requires additional efforts to increase private sector participation in the overall GDP. This is a fact. The public sector still absorbs the majority of the workforce in Libya. Furthermore, the Libyan economy remains heavily related on oil and gas sector, which account for 95% of export and 93% of government revenue. The current economic strategy above mentioned can and should be considered to be a win-win situation if taken in consideration the relation between trade and peace, which we're discussing here today, and in the Libyan scenario. This is based on the, from one side, it can ease the way for Libyan WTO accession process, but also this pathway can also support the broader economic reform efforts aimed at diversification of the national economy and reducing dependence on oil and gas. This is also very important to avoid any economic shock in Libya, and of course, sustaining the development of the country. With this opening remark, I would like to return to Helda and listen to the rest of our guests on more details on the subject. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for sharing with us the peace-building strategy of Libya and the Vision 2040. And thank you also for telling us about the private-public partnership programs that are ongoing in Libya. and all the initiatives that are related also to youth and women. With these opening remarks, I will start our panel discussion with our first speaker, Mr. Serge Stroobans. And I have the first question for you, Mr. Serge, and that is how can IEP's analytical frameworks and peace indices be leveraged to guide private sector investments that contribute to stability and sustainable peace in post-conflict Libya? Please.
Madam Moderator, thank you for giving me the floor. Again, thank you to WTO and the Accessions Division for, together with us at Interpeace, organizing this Trade for Peace Week. It's really a pleasure to be here with you this morning. First of all, a few words about the Institute for Economics and Peace. So we are an Australian think tank measuring and quantifying peace at the intersection between economics, business, and peace. Libya is not like a virgin terrain for us. We have already been collaborating with this country. I personally have trained 200 young Libyans about 6 years ago into the principles of positive peace, which was a great experience. And I guess to answer your question, I need to refer to our concept of positive peace. So positive peace is a systemic definition of peace, which is looking at structures, institutions, and attitudes we need to put in place to create, maintain, and sustain, develop and sustain peaceful societies. Once we did this research and we came up with the systemic concept of positive peace, we also noticed in the research we were doing that countries having a high level or increasing level of positive peace saw a wide variety of economic indicators turning green and even growing also. So faster growing GDP, we would also have, for example, more stable inflation, lower inflation, better credit ratings, better interest rates, and you can go on and on and on. What we also were able to see with this next to these benefits is the predictability this systemic analysis of peace would give us. In comparison to negative peace, which is measured in our global peace index, we would develop the concept of positive peace deficit, looking at the potential for countries to fall into violence or to fall into basically the violence trap because they were not investing anymore into sustainable peace. So that's a first predictability possible. What we also saw is that some of the indicators like household consumption or foreign direct investment were also influenced by the levels of positive peace. So that gives us the opportunity or the capacity to identify in a post-conflict transition phase when economy is going to start again, which chapter of economy is going to start at which moment. Of course, it's not the entire economy which is going to start at the same moment, but you will have phases in this. So we're able to identify which chapters of the economy would start first, and of course, direct investments towards those chapters in priority. I think it is this systemic approach also tells potential investors or the private sector that they can create their own stability. They can be actors in peace building. They don't have to wait for states or national, as you said, Madam, in your introduction, also this UN system or national development agencies to basically clear the situation. And when everything is fine, then you come to the country and you start investing. No, you can be part of this development effort. You can be part of this stabilization and transition effort. You can be a peace builder coming from the private sector. And using our data, using our indices, and following the systemic definition, which means it's not only you creating a sound business environment, it's not only you maybe working on lower levels of corruption, it's not maybe you supporting good governance, but it's you activating all 8 pillars of positive peace. So it also gives you stronger results of your investment. It also gives you stronger results of your own analysis. And that's something we can clearly see also with other actors in the field of development and transition, where when they put their own initiatives under this conceptual umbrella of positive peace, they see the results of their own actions being strengthened because inserted into a systemic approach to peace building. So I think that's what I would like to say to the private sector when using our data is like, if you use our data, you will have a much more precise definition of how and when to invest in what. and you will be able to be an actor of peace building and transition. So you're able to create your own positive environment for the development of your own capabilities. Maybe a side note in the last part of my answer on this first question. We are collaborating with authorities in Libya to start with the Libyan Peace Institute. Its president, Mr. Hamed, sitting right next to me, where we will support them creating a national peace report in which we will look at effects of trade and potential connections between trade for peace. And for an institute like mine, it's really a privilege and an honor to be able to support this transition in Libya and support peace building and the creation of peace and creation of sustainable and positive peace in Libya.
Thank you very much for this very interesting reply and the concepts of positive peace and negative peace, and the role of the private sector, and that they have to be more proactive in building peace and the stabilization of countries than waiting for peace and then to start investing. I'll come back to you with a second question, but before that, I will move to Mr. Frederick Tofel. He's online with us, right? Can he hear us? Okay.
Yes.
I have a question for Mr. Frederick, and that is based on your ongoing study of the private sector in Libya. What strategies would you recommend for creating an enabling environment that attracts responsible private sector investment in Libya, particularly in light of its post-conflict recovery needs? Can he hear us?
Mahir, yes, it's a pleasure to be here with you. My name is Frederick Teufel. I work as a lead coordinator at the African Development Bank. I'm based in Tunisia, and the African Development Bank has long been a close partner of Libya, and even more so now. We during the current situation, we try to support the country. We very much welcome the partnership with WTO in this regard, because what we notice is that alone we cannot achieve much. We all have to come together, and I think also recognizing the fact that Libya being a middle-income country, and where also then ODA really makes up less than 1% of the budget. So therefore, we have to be engaging differently there, and it really calls for us to work together in partnership. Now, the topic of peace and economics and private sector is one that is growing, receiving increasing attention. Right now, we see in the continent of Africa and worldwide an increase in insecurity. Now, conflict is unfortunately not limited to a few countries. In Africa, over 80% of the population live in or next to a country with an ongoing conflict. And there are spillover effects when it comes to that. And so this is why we do need to always look for ways how we can prevent conflict, and then also support countries that are experiencing conflict to get out of it and build peace. Now, in this context, we are working with different entities, also with the United Nations there. And we hear that they are calling for international financial institutions to act as agents for peace, and we're taking this very seriously, and therefore are looking at what are the activities that we can do that actually contribute to peace intentionally, because institutions like ours, we don't have peace as part of our mandate, but naturally our investments, our engagement contributes to peace dynamics, and it is therefore now our ambition to be explicit and intentional about our actions that they contribute to peace. Now, what we have learned in this process is basically that When looking for promotion of peace, it's as much about what you do as it is about how you do it. Because peace building is really a process. It's engaging in a dialogue with basically with across different groups, finding a common ground, and that will then lead basically to a more peaceful engagement across different stakeholders. And this is where trade is key, because at the end of the day, economics is something that where different groups can find a common denominator, and promoting a productive exchange of goods and services requires trust. Trust is at the core of conflict resolution, and for us, we therefore are looking at how we can stimulate these processes. And naturally, as a development bank, we turn our attention always to the role of the private sector and to trade regimes. Now, when we look at the private sector, we do see the linkage between peace and prosperity. Conflict is very often underpinned by a competition also for resources, and a lasting peace therefore creates an environment where people have the opportunity to generate wealth, and this is at the core of what private sector development is all about, and this is also what links to the aspirations of young people. In Libya, we have a high unemployment rate amongst youth, and for the past decade, they have not seen many opportunities for them. And a focus on the private sector provides hope to them, that they can create something that they can start a business, grow a business, create new wealth, and not just basically expect someone else to solve the situation. So, and we see there a very encouraging dynamic in the country when it comes to entrepreneurial initiative. Libyans are very entrepreneurial, and we see a growing number also of locally led incubators that try to link this initiative to finance and expertise, because you have to start somewhere, and it's best in this kind of an environment to start with the young people. And so this is where then now what we see is basically also then in Libya, where there is the opportunity is really around also then establishing the linkages between the investment that already happens. Libya has not the diversification of its economy, not a lack of diversification, means just like that we do need to look at where the FDI right now takes place, which is a lot in the oil and gas sector, but their business linkages can be generated. This is very important, because otherwise these kind of investments, they can also become source of grievances then. Whereas we've seen in many instances from other countries where it's possible to link these investments to the local economy, so that it stimulates some SME, small and medium enterprise activity. Now, what is very important is that as this is true for Libya, as it's true for other countries, that this entire process has to be facilitated by a public and private dialogue there, because you can only meaningfully advance if you know what the different constituencies are looking for. What are their specific challenges? No, because our experience in promoting a business enabling environment reforms is that if you stay too much at the macro level you will not see the impact anytime soon. And so therefore, it is better better to focus on a policy reform agenda that is very targeted towards the challenges that companies and investors face there. And I think this is also where now, for instance, we know that there are very, very few businesses locally that are able to access financing from the banking sector, no, for some reasons. And so addressing these aspects very specifically then helps. No. Similarly, we know that there are a lot of entry points to promote industrial zones and free trade areas because of the infrastructure that already exists. No, and Libya's geographical location. We just look at the potential of the Misurata free trade zone. Something where we all need to come together and really exploit it, because it's this process of where you set yourself that objective of doing that is really also a signaling effect that is positive for peace, because it means you do try to trade with others, and you try to stimulate the domestic private sector, not just. In closing, there we do see a lot of opportunities for investment in the country. Now, this is also looking at the beyond extractors. Now, renewable energy, solar and wind energy. There is a massive potential, and also in agriculture and agribusiness. Libya imports the majority of its products, no, there, but we know a lot of it can actually then also be met from the local private sector. So therefore, and now also I think we also need to understand that Libya, as we think about WTO accession, I think this is an excellent opportunity that we also will be happy to accompany there, and but we also need to recognize now Libya is already a member of COMESA, of the AFCFTA. No, so it's like we have to have that holistic approach of promoting trade, and I think this process of WTO accession can really become one that has many positive spillover effects. And yeah, looking forward to continuing the good discussion now and working with all of you together going forward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tufail, for your very comprehensive reply to this question, especially mentioning the importance of agents for peace and trust, and also how we have to exploit the existing infrastructure in Libya to promote more trade and peace. I will go now to Mr. Abdullah, Dr. Abdullah Hamid. And my question is, how can the principles of dialogue and cooperation that you promote at the Libyan Peace Institute be effectively integrated into private sector initiatives to ensure that economic development and trade reforms contribute to national reconciliation and social cohesion in Libya?
Thank you, Hilda, and thank you for the accession department in the WTO and the Group of Trade and Peace for having us today. It's a great pleasure. First, I'll start to quickly introduce the Libyan Peace Institute. It's an independent institute, has been established by the Presidential Council of Libya, and it had a board of director, including a high level of ministers and private sectors within the board of trustees, to give the opportunity to access to decision makers and push forward the peace buildings in the country. We are focusing in many areas, and back to the question that you just raised, I'll probably mention about the reconciliation projects that we have established in Libya, and these national reconciliations. We developed a strategy that's focused not only in the political reconciliation, but also in the economical issues of reconciliations, and that includes the small businesses and different areas of trade and commerce. it's one of the issue we believe, and I learned a lot this week in the discussion, especially yesterday when they were talking about the trade. Is all the trade a positive trade, or are they a negative trade? And I think Libya is an example. We have an informal economy. We have many resources. We are a country rich of resources, and these resources sometimes could be a reason for conflicts in the country. And that's for our Russian national reconciliation. We try to focus on gathering people, including everybody in the discussion. So we have brought unions, businessmen, political parties, some officials, and it was for the first time they all sat together in Libya and discussed different areas, including these economical aspects and the distribution of wealth, distribution of development, and diversification of economy, and how can we just be away from the oil, as our ambassador mentioned, a large number of our revenues just come from the oil. At the LBI, we thought is the first thing that we should focus on is evaluating the current situation in the ground, and we are with help of IEP, we'll do an evaluation and doing a first ever national report on peace building in the country, and that will evaluate the economical and different aspects, and will create the threshold for us to compare from one year to another. After this report, we will identify exactly where are the areas that we could focus on to help trade and small businesses together. There are many studies for SMEs that showed the challenges that SMEs are facing in Libya. And some of these challenges are, for example, some of them we see today, and they are out of the hands of the businessmen or the private sector, if I may say, such as the division in government sometimes, or the political instability from time to another. But also we have an issue with education. There is a gap between the educational system and the demands in the employment sector. So these are things that could help the private sector in moving them forward. Other aspects that we believe it will help in the inclusivity, and we are working on in the LPI, is the business to business delegations. And we are working with we are organizing one delegation for Japanese companies to come into Libya. Probably for now, they will do the first session in Tunis because of some restriction in the Japanese side. They cannot enter into Libya, but these will be sort of gathering counterparts between both parties and talk together. Hopefully, that's partnership will create more job opportunities and knowledge transfer and lots of trades between the two countries. Also, we are focusing on youth and women in trade. So how can we create more possibilities? And we are training 20 Libyans from across the countries. Most of them are women and youth, and these people will be trained in peace building, conflict management, and how to create small businesses to achieve the positive peace in the country. That's probably will follow by another missions, another trainings from different groups as well. I'll stop here.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Abdullah. I will move now to Mr. Haytham. And then I will take the second round of questions. But I'm just looking at the watch, and we're running out of time now for our second round. So please try to be as brief as possible. So, Mr. Haytham, how is Libya TradeNet utilizing digital commerce solutions to enhance market access and stimulate private sector investment in Libya's recovery process?
Good morning. I don't know if Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here. It's my pleasure to share our experience in Libya Trade Network. Actually, thank you, WTO and Accession Department for inviting us. I would like to talk a little bit about Libyan situation. So I'll try to describe the situation there. Libya economic model is quite vulnerable since it's heavily relying on the oil revenue, which accounts more than 90%, as Madam President mentioned, of our budget. A significant portion of the budget allocated to the government salaries, which is, a large part of the workforce is working with the public sector. I think we need to ask why, because there's not that much job opportunities in the market, especially for women, youth, and most of the capable people that are working with the government. And with the global shift toward the green energy and alternative source of powers, coupled with the fluctuation of the oil and gas market, our economy remain fragile. Therefore, it's crucial for us to diversify our economy by empowering, encouraging the private sector to create more job opportunities and establish more sustainable, diversified economy. Okay, and from other side, Libya is a very large country, and the market there is fragmented, concentrated in the north, in the big cities, which make it limited access to the customers elsewhere. Describing that e-commerce is not only a normal sector, it's a fast-growing sector. It's a must in our situation because with enabling the e-commerce, we are ensuring the accessibility to all the folks in the country. We are in Libya Trade Network. We are actually a government institution. We were working under the umbrella of the government. We started to work as a regulator in the e-commerce since 2021. We started to partnership initiated more than one workshop with the private sector to better understand the situation in Libya. That led us to that there is a lack of policies that organize the e-commerce in Libya. So we started to draft some policies, and we published a final policy that segmenting the e-commerce into eight types, eight categories, starting from, like, for example, online marketplace which is different from the normal e-commerce or branded e-commerce or services e-commerce. We included also the practices that who's trying to selling their product through the social media platforms because the lack of fund that enabling them to hire more people to building their own platform or to even building their own companies. After we published this policy, we published also an online platform to register these people who's practicing the e-commerce. You can register your business online, no trudging to some dusty offices, no queues anymore. So it's easier, to register yourself online with no obstacles, and voila, you are officially trader now. You can have access to more e-commerce tools like finance instruments. For example, we made some partnerships with fintech solution companies. So the people who are registered in our platform, they will guarantee to have access to payment gateway, to mobility payment point of sales. And in the parallel, we established a special training center specialized in the trade and with subspecialty for e-commerce. So the people who are registered in our platform will have an free access to more courses to raise the awareness for all the stakeholders related to the e-commerce. Providing more jobs mean it's more stable for the youth and the women and the people in the country. Alternative job opportunities will create more peaceful and less tension in the environment in the government. That's briefly what we are doing regarding to the e-commerce and Libya Trade Network. I don't want to take longer time, so I will move the floor for you, Your Excellency. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your introduction of the e-commerce project in Libya, and that enable all categories of the society to have access to trade and commerce, and ensure inclusivity for youth, women, and all other categories. With that, I will move back to Mr. Serge for the second round of questions. And now we have only 15 minutes, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4 speakers, okay? So you divide between yourselves the 15 minutes. And so the first question is, the second question to you, Mr. Serge, is what specific insights from IEP's research have proven most effective in demonstrating the impact of private sector engagement on economic resilience in fragile environments like Libya? After hearing from all other speakers, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I will be very brief, bullet style. But so positive peace, as I explained before, is a measure of resilience, economic resilience, but also other forms of resilience, such as ecological resilience, for example. It can be considered as an alternative measure for the SDGs, which are difficult to measure and to interpret. So they are also defining, as I said before, a better environment for investment. Investment you can do in peace, but still have an economic return on investment. And I think that's the innovative part, is to say you don't have to invest in peace to get peace, and you don't have to invest in economy to get an economic return on investment. You can really invest in peace, stronger societies, high levels of resilience, and still get your return on investment. And I think that's the innovative part. You invest in much more than the business environment. And so you have 8 pillars of positive peace. You need to trigger them all to get to the systemic transformation. But you also have pillars such as high levels of human capital. And I heard before, my Libyan colleagues on the panel talking about the availability of youth, but what is the quality in terms of education, in terms of skills to get into the markets that you're opening for them? I think that's important. And knowing that human capital is much more than education, an equitable distribution of resources, all different aspects of positive peace in which can be invested to eventually still get an economic return investment and a stronger society. Two more things. When we look at the attitude, structures, and institutions, it's the attitudes which are problematic over a period of 10, 15 years. So I would say leave the structures and institutions to the public sector and use your private sector to change those attitudes. I guess that's maybe how we can move forward. In all the research we're doing, we're also always saying mitigate the impact and increase the resilience. Global Terrorism Index, mitigate the impact and make sure that you transform your society. That's how you're going to be very healthy in countering terrorism and preventing and countering violent extremism. In the ecological threat report, diminish the ecological threats, diminish this impact, and make sure that countries are more able to absorb those shocks, the external shocks. When it comes to peace, just the opposition between negative and positive peace is showing that to you. Last point. We are in a situation today where in development, high needs, low budgets, it's time to become efficient, right? What better than the private sector to bring efficiency in this domain? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your efficiency. I will move now to Frederick. And Mr. Frederick, how can trade and economic policies be designed or adopted to support Libya's post-conflict recovery? And what role can the private sector play in ensuring these policies translate into sustainable development outcome?
Yeah, thank you so much. I will also stay very brief because I welcome the opportunity to hear also from the other panelists. I think these were great interventions. Now, the key when designing policies is related to trade is to understand very well who trades what and how and who benefits. how much, and who does not benefit yet, and where. But because it's like we know that Libya, there is a lot of trade happening basically within the country, within a divided country, and it's happening across borders, which is both of which is not documented necessarily. Now, it's important to have an understanding of these existing trade patterns, because these can become the entry points to build resilience. What we have seen in other environments is also when, for instance, you design agricultural value chains, you can look at different groups that have traditionally been conflict parties to see how they both benefit from it. So, because it's important that an economic policy, when it is perceived as by some as being excluding, no, then the perception of exclusion creates the ground again for conflict. So you need to be very mindful of that. Now, the beauty of a focus on private sector is that you basically then say we will give an opportunity enough for these groups to create wealth themselves, to become productive. So this is really important there. Understand the trade patterns that exist. How do they overlap with the conflict dimensions? And then where can you have the greatest peace impact by basically fostering certain value chains, certain trade patterns that are inclusive, and that they also promote cooperation, that they promote dialogue between groups that may be at risk of conflict or traditionally in conflictual positions. So then, over time, trade will basically and private sector initiative will contribute to building peace. And now, just to say that we are very much look forward to continuing the conversation there with everyone on the panel, because we're currently conducting a study in this regard, and we will also we're also planning for an event in Libya over the coming months with the authorities, and so this will be an opportunity. We're already in touch with WTO also on this, for us to continue the conversation and identify actionable recommendations that we can all move forward with. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for keeping on emphasizing the importance of inclusiveness in this process. I will move now to Dr. Abdullah again. Dr. Abdullah, in your experience, what frameworks or strategies have proven most successful in establishing partnerships between the private sector and civil society organizations in Libya? And how can these collaborations enhance the effectiveness of peace-building efforts and sustainable economic reform? Please.
Thank you, Hilda. I think that's a very important question. In Libya, the NGO is not really as active as in different places of other countries. And the relationship between the NGOs and the private sector is not really being seen that strong. Most of our NGOs are working with international partners, not with the local business activities. And that's one of the issues that we have identified, and we think we have to work closely to strengthen the relationship between the NGOs and the private sector in Libya. We always believe the best way forward and the best strategy is bringing people together, trying to identify a shared vision and shared tasks together to achieve cooperations and for each of them to achieve the task that they are asked for. In NGOs lately, we have some of the NGOs are quite successful, working, as I said, with the international partners and working in business and trade, and we have seen many examples in Tripoli and in Benghazi. But again, they're not really working closely with the government and with the business sector.
Thank you very much. The role of the NGO is very important in any society. And now I will go back to Mr. Haytham. Last question. What role do digital innovations play in creating a sustainable trade ecosystem that supports Libya's path to economic stability and progress towards WTO accession?
Actually, I try to brief. Libya Trade Network, we're working on dual, not only e-commerce regulator, we're actually a trade facilitator according to resolution number 681 from the Council of Ministry. We are working on trade facilitation by establishing more than one project. I will talk briefly about two of them. One of them is Trade Facilitation Unit, is online platform that publishes all the regulations, all the processes related to the foreign trade, import and export, all the laws. It's available online now with only the Arabic language, but we are developing it to be in English language, so it will published widely. A centralized platform embedded with a claim system that traders can enter and put their claims, asking about all the clocks in the trade process. So I think this is one of the most important platforms. And the other is the Libyan Single Window platform that integrated all the stakeholders related to the import-export process or the foreign trade, starting from the banks, the customs, ports authority. We already digitalized all the documents related to this process. We are integrating all these entities, so we are building like a trade database that the government institution can to rely on. Actually, the impact will increase the flow by reducing administrative bottlenecks, encouraging the investment by simplifying trade compliance. I think these two platforms will meet the requirements of the WTO accession, and to increase transparency and trade regulations, reduce non-tariff barriers that streamline import-export processes, improving the coordination between the government and the agencies and the private sector as well. That's on brief on two most important systems that we are working on. I would like to mention that Mr. Abdullah also played a very good role back in 2013, since he was the CEO of Libyan Trade Network, and he started back then to also we worked together to draft the first policy related to the digital transformation, and it's finally published by the parliament 2 years ago. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Libya is ready for accession then.
Hopefully. Yeah, hopefully. Yeah.
Okay. I will take 3 questions before we go to our breakout groups. If we have a question from the floor or from the Zoom online, please, any questions? Yes, online.
Thank you, Ms. Hilda. One of the questions from online is as follows. Do you have any information on the practice in Albania for the employment of women and youth? The head of the family is working abroad and send the money home for investment, so family businesses in Albania, while the wife and children in young age run the business. So they don't specify to who, but I think can be addressed from any of the panelists. I hope it's clear.
Would you all, I will give, like, would you all like to take this question?
Albania?
It's not Albania, I mean Libya.
Can we hear the question?
But I think they mean Libya.
Yes, let's
Okay.
have
Would
Libya.
you like to
Thank
start,
you.
Dr. Abdullah?
Sorry, Okay, great. Do you have any information on the practice in Libya for the employment of women and youth? And then she gives an example, he or she. The head of the family is working abroad and sends the money home for investment, and this investment is in the form of a family business. And this family business is run by the wife and young children, so children that are not of age in the country. So that's the question.
Usually, there is a new form of business now that is developing that families do business. I mean, how you can benefit
FDIs.
from the, no, not FDIs, but mainly is that transfers from abroad that come to the country, and how can you benefit from that and make investments for family businesses, also SMEs, small businesses from transfers from abroad.
Yeah, I can start maybe answering. So, helping my colleagues finding the answers. Just this is something we have seen throughout the work we are doing. Investigating some of the pillars like acceptance of the rights of others, equitable distribution of resources, and definitely the development of human capital. And we need to be very clear about this, that it can sometimes lead to very distorted and dangerous situations. Just to give you an example, my Zimbabwe, or I would say the countries around South Africa, you would see a lot of NGOs supporting youth and women empowerment, subsidizing small businesses, the businesses the question is talking about, while the husband is illegally working in South Africa and mining and really exposing himself to a lot of insecurity and dangers to bring the money into those businesses in the neighboring countries. So I guess the question hidden behind the question is to ask, like, is this a good thing? Are we really doing the right stuff? So in the development sector and in the research we are doing, we need to be aware of this type of potential distortions in the good work we try to do. So, I mean, I would advocate to have a very holistic approach, really understanding what the motivations are, what the dynamics are of economics and trades, especially, and we spoke about it yesterday, especially in border regions, and make sure that we do not produce more harm than we will do good. So we need to understand. So what this question is telling us, we need to understand these dynamics, and we need to make sure that we are pressing the right buttons there when we try to develop, and not pushing for basically gender discrimination, not pushing people into difficult and dangerous situations, but making sure that we are doing the right job.
I'll just comment before on this point. I was in a panel a couple of months ago, and that was in UNCTAD, and this question came up also, and that mainly was if the husband is working in Switzerland and he transfers the amount back to Libya or to any other African country, and that money, the families are using that money to start businesses and to invest in businesses, small businesses. So I think maybe that is what the person meant as well.
I think if I can come back just for 30 seconds, of course, that's exactly what I said also. If it's done in the proper way, remittances are a large portion of a lot of economies throughout the world also, but it needs to be done in the correct way. From a IP perspective, what we really see, what we really appreciate is that, working with diaspora throughout the world in different countries, we see that there is also remittance of positive peace going back to the country of origin. We have trade, for example, South Sudanese diaspora in Melbourne, in Australia, in very difficult areas of Melbourne, very good results in these neighborhoods. And at the same time, we saw that together with financial assets, also knowledge, skills, and I would say this training in positive peace went back to South Sudan, and we ended up also training people in Juba because of that. So remittances goes with money, but also with other things than money. On a positive note, Hilda.
Would you like to take that?
Yes. I think the situation in Libya is a bit different in these aspects, and the reason I'm saying that, we have about 85% of our employment in public sector. So most of the people are working in the public sectors are getting paid, and there is money for livings, and we don't really have that large number of Libyan abroad who live abroad and then they can send money back. Some do, and usually what they do, they invest these monies for real estate, for properties, more than opening businesses. However, it works in Libya the other way around. We could see, for example, many of the Syrians who moved into Libya, they're actually supporting their families from Libya. They are sending their money outside to Syria and to different places from the revenue that they're creating from the private sector in Libya. For the payments, and the other day this issue was raised in one of the discussions. Payment is a crucial issue in Libya. Even these days, we start having the electronic payments, and it's much better. But transferring money outside and bringing money in is not very easy. The difference between the black market and the official price is quite different, and there are some obstacles, so it's not really easy to send money in a very formal way inside the country. Whatever money have to come to Libya, you have to find other ways to send the money, unfortunately.
Thank you very much. Anybody would like to take? Frederick, would you like to take this also?
No, I think not much to add. Just to say that the role of the diaspora and basically how we can encourage and facilitate the use of remittances towards productive activities is something that we really see as a very important dimension, and it links up closely to the entrepreneurial dynamic, where we see a lot of younger people trying to start businesses and then also looking for some capital, basically through crowdfunding platforms and so on. So I think it's important to understand well the entry points there, because as it is difficult to access finance for those that want to start and grow their businesses, remittances is also one entry point that needs to be better exploited.
Thank you very much. Yeah, please, Clancy.
Thank you very much. Actually, coming to such a casual setting is very different than the formal settings we usually work in, and it's very enlightening because from all the questions I would have imagined, this is quite different, and it is important to get such points mentioned, because I do agree with Dr. Abdullah. I think the situation in Libya, or I believe the situation in Libya, is a little bit different. We don't have many diasporas that do send funds home, but maybe. But how about foreigners that live in Libya? Probably there is families that do need the such to look into financial tools that would help in such situation, and that's important to be highlighted. Also, maybe the question highlights the question of protection of such sectors, women and youth in Libya. It's very enlightening, I must say, and thank you for whoever put the question. It's different. And we need to be aware of such situations to put any model or to engineer any model that would be successful in Libya. And this brings us back to the question, how much is really clear about the economy situation, and the data question is another very important aspect of everything that we're talking about here today. Thank you.
Ambassador Haytham?
I don't think that I can add anything after Dr. Abdullah and Madam Ambassador what said. It's the most important thing to develop our finance infrastructure to make it easier and more secure for them to transfer the money across all the world. I think, yeah, this is the most important point. And I think the financial instrument is now more improved, and there's a lot of private sector participation by improving and integrating with the international finance instruments. That's all what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. If we don't have any more questions. Okay, can you help me to, we need breakup groups. We need, how many groups can we get? 2, 3? Okay, so we'll have 3 groups in the room and 1 group online. What we need you to do is to discuss what you have already had in the room, and then to come up with the solutions and actionable recommendations that can help Libya to move forward with its peace-building efforts and initiatives. So if you don't mind, please, we would like to, and you will have 15 minutes to come up with very good solutions, okay, and recommendations. So please, you can have three from one group there and one group in the middle and the third group there. Inshallah. I would like to ask each group to present their recommendations. And Kasia, if you would like to give the floor to each one of the groups, please. So, because you have the numbers, so yes, please. Go ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Hilda. I will start with group 1, which is the group online. And I'll be presenting 3 points that we discussed with, especially with a lot of input from Frederick that has been quite insightful. So from the WTO side, we did talk about the accessions process. The significance of it in terms of domestic reforms. We understand that Libya is quite advanced in a lot of the capacity that's needed to adhere to the WTO. But this process, it really addresses some of the challenges that were here talked about, such as transfer of finance within and outside. So this domestic reforms that links Libya to the multilateral trading system would support sustainable peace. On the other recommendation, there was a mention of institutional framework for inclusive private development. So a private development, we understood that addresses critically specific sectors where there's a lot of high demand, and it was mentioned renewable energy. There was also a mention of strengthening the public-private sector dialogue, as this is the key for supporting Libya's private sector on the ground. I will now give the floor to Group 2. So please, Group 2, mention your recommendations.
So group 2, in group 2, we spoke about, basically we continued discussion about doing more good than harm. So you need to do it in a right way. You need to understand that some of your actions can have negative influences in the overall process. So the idea of an holistic approach was discussed, and also an idea in which the focus should not only be, I mean, I was in this group, so I influenced it a little bit the results of the discussions, but definitely make sure. Yeah, so basically I came up with a recommendation. No, that's not true. That's not true. But basically make sure that you don't only focus on economic development on its own. I think it needs to be surrounded by other measures, by government, but also by the private sector, the NGOs working there, to make sure that these initiatives of economic development can then be enshrined in a reinforced, I would say, public and private sector presence, but also in a reinforced adapted governance. I think we spoke about, a lot of initiatives, only focusing on economic development. You're not creating a more peaceful and more stable society. It's just creating a more wealthy society, which, as we all know, can lead to more insecurity and to more violence also. So we got to know each other very well, and we discussed that approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Serge. Quite insightful. Group 3, please.
Hello, so Group 3 would be us. So first of all, many thanks to the team for the productive insights. We also talked a lot about moving the accession process forward, and we noticed that there will be positive results in doing so. So we started by identifying the challenges that the country faces within the country, the political division, the informal economy, and specific challenges particular to the private sector, such as lack of funding, lack of experience of the private sector, a gap in the education sector. And then we realized that if the accession process, if there is a renewed political commitment in the accession process, there will be several reforms that will help the country and that will lead to the positive peace, such as institutional reforms, improving legislation. And on the political side, to renew the commitment from the stakeholders, there is a need to ensure they understand the benefit of accessions, that some of their fears are answered. And to achieve that, there could be workshops within the country to build the capacity of the stakeholders, evaluation reports. And it's really important to emphasize that the Libyan society are entrepreneurial by nature. So what we need to do is build a system that supports the businesses and the entrepreneurs, and that will lead to peace, because economic stability is the main driver of peace. So that's our recommendations. Thank you.
Then we'll call last but not least, Group 4, please.
Well, I don't think 15 minutes was enough. 20, but yeah, there's a lot to discuss. We started with the accession process. So yeah, I think it's all group influenced by someone. I think, yeah. Anyway, the accession process is very important actually. But we discussed why Libya is not anymore in the process of accession. I think it's about awareness. We have to raise the awareness about the accession, because by, as the mentioned, making more workshops to all the stakeholders related to the accession program. Actually, the second thing is about the PPP, partnership between the private and the public sector. We need to build the trust between the private and public sector. There's a gap. The private sector is fed by the public sector, because it's relying on the budget coming from this is the truth. They are relying on the budget coming from the public sector. So we need to figure out how to mitigate this gap, and we build the trust between the private and the public sector. Actually, about the diversification, Libya is, like we are exporting oil, but we don't have a real oil industry. We need to focus on the oil industry, producing more the products like refineries and other products. We are importing everything related to the oil, and we export the crude oil. I think it's, and finally, we have a large country, as I mentioned before. We have a fine resources of water. We need to focus on agriculture, for example. We have a diversification in tourists, like we have sea, we have sand, we have mountains, we have everything there. I hope that we can focus on the agriculture, tourist, and that's our recommendation. It's a big. Yeah, it's 15 minutes. We try to, yeah.
Okay, just before we're closing, I will give Her Excellency the floor to say a few words, and then we'll close the meeting. Thank you.
I would just need 2 minutes to really thank, at the beginning, to thank everyone involved in such a discussion. Thank you to the World Trade Organization and especially the accession department for bringing such a topic to light. Trade and peace and the relation between the two is very important. In the Libyan situation, it's crucial. It's really crucial. The equation on the ground emphasizes the economic aspect of the struggle, political, economic relations, historical literature from wars is something we can discuss. But in Libya, it's definitely a different formula, but fits in all that. It's definitely a case, a very strong case for the relation between trade and peace if there was any. I would like to end by thanking all suggestions coming from the floor. Very enlightening, very strong comments. And I must say, it does reflect a deep understanding of the topic in general, but also on the situation in Libya, which I'm very grateful for. Thank you very much for our Madam Moderator for such an amazing work. And thank you for the whole team. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Ambassador Lamia. Before I close, I just want to give just general comment on the final recommendations that we heard. And my just comment here is that I know we had a very short time to come up with a more detailed, focused, actionable recommendations. But from what I heard, the only recommendation that had actionable or actions that can be taken forward is the one about raising awareness, because that said we want to raise awareness by organizing more workshops to all the stakeholders. All other recommendations are still in general terms. Okay, they don't give me mechanism for implementation. So this is what we need. I don't want to hear moving accession process forward. How? I want to hear holistic approach. How? I want to get the how. So next time when we do actionable recommendations, we want the mechanism for implementation. But thank you very much, all of you, for your very active participation in this session. And I do hope that Libya will very soon become a member of the WTO. Soon meaning 3-4 years. But we also hope that peace and prosperity will come back to Libya very soon. And I'm willing to take part in this process as the Arab Swiss Chamber of Commerce. So I do hope there will be collaboration with the government of Libya in this direction. And thank you again very much, all of you, for your participation in this session. See you next time. Thank you.